Welcome to Conscious Conversations. My name's Luke McLean. Conscious Conversations is an extension of my life. So what it does is it catches up with people who are living from a place of purpose, of intention. And what I do is I reach out to these people and I see if they'll come on my show. I explain what the podcast is about, and we get them down and we sit down and we talk to their story. And their story of how they got to where they got to, whether it's just from an innate value system that they've always had, or whether there was an aha moment that has set them on a path to live with this real purpose, intention, and authenticity. And then we story tell that, and we dig into that, and we ask some questions about how that really took place. And along the way, we open up and we try to share the tools and resources and learnings that have allowed them to be successful from their real deepest and most authentic purpose and values. And these people often come with really inspiring stories and great learnings. So that's what Conscious Conversations is about. Why do we do this? Why create this podcast? Because we need people. We need people to live with greater intention and from a greater place of purpose and values. We actually need people to know what their values really are and what are the behaviours, ceremonies, rituals and practices that can allow them to bring those values to life rather than them just sit there as a concept, which is the work that I do. My name is Luke McLean. I'm a meditation teacher and I'm a life coach, and I work with people to live from a greater meaning, fulfillment and purpose, to really help them get clear about who they are, what they want to stand for, and then what are the goals, the behaviours, the practices that they need to bring into their life to live and lead from that place. That for me is holistic growth, and that's the name of the company that I've founded to do this from. And why do I think that's important is because that's performance, that's the sweet spot. You can't have performance without fulfillment. And you don't get fulfillment without stretching yourself, without growing, without getting uncomfortable, without having to make tough decisions. And often they're the bits that people miss. And that's what holistic growth works with. And using things like meditation and mindfulness and journaling and well-being and diet and energy, we're bringing all this together to holistically grow the person to have A, the vibrancy, B, the resilience to show up and be their best version. And that's just not a cliche statement, that's the truth. So if you want to check more about what I'm doing, it's holisticgrowth.com.au. And today, we've got an awesome story from a meditation teacher and one of my favourite meditation teachers, Meg James. Now, Meg shares her story from a corporate life to taking that step and that aha moment while she's on retreat to go, I need to change. I need to leave that job, and I'm going to start and follow my passion and follow my heart and become a meditation teacher. And Kate grew up in a family of mindfulness and meditation. Her mum's Kate James, who again is an awesome mindfulness and meditation teacher. She's an amazing career and life coach. So this has been in Meg's sphere all her life. But yet it still took her a long time to make the step. And this is a story for everyone. It doesn't happen overnight. There's signs and there's voices and there's warnings and things that come into our awareness that when we've got the spaciousness to see, they're there, and Meg had that. So this is a beautiful podcast, one of my favourites. So without further ado, this is Conscious Conversations. My name's Luke McLean. Sit back for another 45 minutes or so and enjoy the story of Meg James.
I was just saying, Meg, it must have been quite unique for you, growing up, especially with Kate, being really an early adopter to meditation and mindfulness, and you growing into that space, at a very young age, and then taking almost that want to take your yoga practice your way? And
I think it was a bit of both. I think it was kind of like, well, I know that I want to do some kind of practice like this. And yeah, there was that just sort of typical teenage resistance of, I'm going to figure it out myself and find a way that works for me. And then I was someone who was just quite an active person. Moving my body has always been something that I've really valued and found quite a lot of peace in. So the yoga kind of just married everything up perfectly for me. And it just, that was the beginning of me being on that journey of really figuring out a sense of self. And that was really powerful. And I think that that's something that, meditation and yoga gives us.
Absolutely. And how, with the clients you work with now, and myself similarly, like how important for you is it to find and work with clients through meditation on discovering that sense of self within the work?
I think it's paramount. I feel like my work that I do now is really about just connecting with yourself and being able to understand, okay, what emotions am I experiencing, and what are the thoughts that are going on in my mind, and what are my habitual ways of reacting and my limiting beliefs, and how can I observe these aspects that make up me as a person, and work with myself or work with yourself individually to make just being in the world that little bit easier.
Yeah.
Active.
Yeah. And so, you're talking about the meditations about 18. Was that sort of when you got right back into meditation, or was there still a lapse between sort of you really taking it on as a serious practice as a teenager?
That was kind of the beginning of, just a small kind of aspect of my meditation. And then I think it was when I was about 21, I went backpacking through Europe on my own, and I wasn't going to yoga classes. I had no money and was often in places where, English wasn't the language that was spoken. And so being on the go quite a lot, I just found it easy to just meditate.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it. I just started meditating more and more and got more into it. And then even as I was doing my yoga teacher training, I remember that the meditation side of things was always the area that I was just so much more passionate about and so much more curious about too. So, it just kind of, it grew and I grew with it as well. And then I sort of reached a point where I realized that I was probably doing more of the meditation than the yoga on a consistent basis. And so that was, the main aspect of my practice.
Yeah, okay. And overseas, did you get exposure to any other sort of meditation teachings, or were you not in those areas?
I wasn't really in those areas. I mean, I was 21 and
yeah,
having a bit of a party at the same time.
So yeah, for sure.
I didn't quite go down that path. And I think that that's something that if I were to go traveling now, I would be more inclined to seek out different teachers and different philosophies as well, because there's just so much out there.
Yeah, I often think if I had my time again that you'd go to so many different places and have different experiences based on what you know.
I know, absolutely. So hopefully in the future there's an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So when did you then sort of make that decision to turn this into a career, or to transition out of yoga and more into meditation? Because I know that you left a corporate job to sort of really pursue this.
Yes, I did. So I was working in media and advertising, and I just felt a bit stressed, and I felt like the environment was not aligned with my values. And I was so passionate about yoga and meditation and helping people and living a different life. And so I just had this like constant sort of feeling of tension within me, like, oh, I just think that there's more than what I'm doing just now, even though being in the corporate world felt easy and safe and, provided a good steady income. And I had been in Bali. So I'd gone to a retreat in Bali, and I'd spent quite a lot of time practicing yoga and meditation over there. And when I got back to my job, I just resigned, and I put my faith into the universe. And I was really lucky that instantly I got a job with Happy Melon. So I do a lot of work with the studio Happy Melon in Armidale, and they're all about yoga and meditation and Pilates and just the whole like mind body wellness. And
yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, it was really interesting that the teachers that I really gravitated to in that space were the mindfulness teachers, the meditation teachers. And I found myself going to more of those classes than the physical movement classes. And I think it was probably around that time that I ended up injuring my knee quite badly from yoga.
Okay.
And so I couldn't practice.
Yeah, I remember your mum was telling me this.
Yeah, and that was really hard, given it had been such a big part of my life. But I'm such a believer that these things happen for a reason. And so I just sat still, and I just sat in meditation, and I meditated and meditated and meditated. And I feel like it organically just became my career without even having that intention. It just kind of happened.
And for many people, probably listening to this probably would feel that that's hard to believe.
Yeah, I mean, I find it hard to believe.
But when we create the space to manifest that energy, amazing what can actually come from that.
Oh, absolutely. And just being able to trust in the universe too, and trust in the process. You know, I think it's so easy to get caught up in thinking, oh, I've got to have a plan, and I need to know what I'm going to do, and I need to have all of the answers and everything. And I just believe if you allow things to be a little bit messy sometimes, then they do figure themselves out and things come to light without having to be so forced.
So that's cool. I'd love to spend a moment just connecting on that trip to Bali and sort of what took place there in terms of how you get the understanding to come back and actually make those big decisions. And they're the decisions often people sit with for so long and want to move forward on, but actually never do. But what happened in that time?
I remember being in Bali and being very connected with my practice and being in nature and in this beautiful environment. And I felt just so miserable. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Why am I so unhappy? You know, this is just such an amazing place to be. And I was there with my partner, and I felt really anxious, and I was just in the back of my mind constantly dreading the thought of going back to work and not being able to just feel connected the whole time to that version of me that felt most like me. You know, I think that I was working in an environment where I felt like I had to put a mask on every day, and it felt incredibly inauthentic. And so there was just this, it was like a sadness within me of just, oh, I can't believe that that's my life. And I didn't look forward to that return. And so I didn't sort of consciously think, okay, when I get home, I'm going to quit my job and make this my career and figure out a way that I can just be my authentic self the whole time. It was almost quite impulsive, the decision to quit. And I guess at that point in time, I was in my mid-20s and I didn't have any mortgage or children or anything to worry about. Like, I did have the luxury of making that decision. But it was like something just tweaked in me. I was just overcome by this drive that I just had to do this. And I had no plan. I had no idea what it was going to look like. And I just kind of made the leap.
Wow.
Yeah.
Had you been, with your meditation practice, had you been meditating on that previously before going to Bali?
Yeah, I'd been meditating on that feeling of, I guess, inattention and, when you find yourself in a position where you just feel a little bit misaligned. So I was meditating on that and trying to get an understanding of where this misalignment was coming from. And I think that that's kind of where the answers revealed themselves when I had the opportunity to sort of step back a little bit. And I think that's one of the beauties of being in a different space, and particularly being somewhere like Bali that is such a spiritual space. The answers just naturally kind of start coming to the surface. You have to be able to listen as well.
Yeah, and I what I'm hearing, Meg, is that you almost needed the space to listen.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
Okay. And that space was the physical space, but then that almost created the emotional and mental space to absorb the real feelings.
Yeah, so true. Absolutely. And I think it's really difficult to do that in our society. There's just so much noise and busyness and chaos, and it's very easy to get sort of swept up in just continuing to go through the motions and not really feel our emotions and not really process things on a deeper level, particularly if you don't have that as part of a practice in your life. And I think that a lot of people miss out on a lot of things by being a little bit asleep sometimes.
Well, in some ways, without even knowing it, we're practicing and we're training the mind to be either in a healthy way or in an unhealthy way, to be, responsive or reactive. So often we've trained it to be so disconnected or to be so full and noisy that to actually get that requires a lot of retraining, or as you're sort of, what you did is create a real shift in alignment to how you live and a real pause from what you currently do to then allow that emotional and mental space to manifest into being able to listen to it.
Oh, absolutely. It's so true. Absolutely.
So from there, you went to Happy Melon, and really just from the knee injury, did you feel like the knee injury is a little bit of a sign to move forward with the meditation and become certified and to be, to really dig deeper?
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of always more a bit of a plan for me to teach yoga than meditation. And so I injured my knee, and there was a small period of time where I was sort of teaching more restorative yoga. And I just loved that meditative aspect to it. And so I just kind of thought, like, this is a message. This is another message that I need to listen to. And, I saw a few different healers and was interested in learning, like, what's the energetic meaning of an injury in my right knee? And a lot of that is about moving forward. And so I thought, okay, this is literally my body's way of telling me that I'm not moving forward in the right direction. And I was like, okay, what is it that I'm finding the most joy in and the most lightness in? And it was meditation, but there was a lot of fear around it for me. You know, how the hell can I make a living as a meditation teacher? And will people take me seriously, or are they going to think that I'm just some like hippy dippy woo woo chick? And so it took a bit of time to overcome that kind of story that I had in my head that this wasn't a career path for someone, that it was not really an option. And it was amazing that when I did find the courage and the confidence to back myself, just how easily it all started to flow.
Yeah. There's a lot of stigma attached around teaching meditation for a profession that's meant to be of no attachment.
Absolutely.
And the amount of stories that we can tell internally about that and what people will think and how it will be judged and thought of, and then obviously the financial, that it can be quite absorbing, but it can also, it can hold you back a lot from trying to be that authentic self, because there's such a tradition to it, and people do it in so many different ways.
Totally.
That to find your way, to find your authentic voice can be quite difficult.
Totally. And also I think, another part to it for me was the fact that I am young, and the teachers that I was looking up to were people who had so much more life experience than I do, and so much more knowledge and awareness in this space. And so I didn't feel like I necessarily had the legs to stand on to be able to kind of go out there and share these things. But I think that that's where I've been incredibly lucky that I did start from such a young age. So in remembering that I have had, all of those years of experience as a younger person, which is different to most people, that kind of helped to guide me along the way and not feel so like that sense of being an imposter.
Yeah. Do you think, Kate, we need, especially these days, a diverse range of not just meditation teachers, but meditation teachers from different life experiences and ages to talk to everyone? So the 18 to 25-year-old girl or guy, for instance, maybe is not going to resonate with Jack Cornfield because he's 60 and it's too far a leap to actually take in what he's saying, where someone at 30 or 25 is much more accessible to listen to and go, I can relate your life to my life.
Yeah.
It's not as far.
Yeah, definitely. And I experienced that with, between my mum and I. Like, mum used to love Tara, or she still does. She loves Tara Brach's work. And she was always kind of saying to me, you really need to get more into her work. And particularly when I was a bit younger, it just didn't resonate with me. I didn't connect with it at all. And I think that a large reason why is because there was just such a disparity in life stage. So I think that if there's someone who's a similar age to me that could potentially connect with someone like myself, because we are living similar experiences and trajectories and facing similar challenges, I think that that's a really important one too, because we all face such different challenges at different stages of our lives. And that's the part I think that we connect on.
Absolutely. And we know in meditation, in life, so much of our ability to get cut through is through story that resonates, which is exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
If there's a young mum who's got 2 young kids or 1 young child and can resonate with that person teaching from that space and holding their space quite well, and there's something to give, then that's the story that needs to be told at that particular time for that person.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's such a gift for me personally to be able to kind of draw from the experiences that I'm having in my life and share them with the people that I'm teaching, and to be able to kind of heal the challenges and the stresses that arise in that kind of collective community, and to have it coming both ways, students in my class who are like, yeah, I really understand where you're at the moment, much like I understand where they're at. So it's a really lovely forum. And I think what's interesting too is that in my classes, there still are people who are older than me, and that's really lovely. There are people who I get to draw on their wisdom too and their life experiences and learn more about what's going on in their worlds, and that educates me as a teacher to be able to think about things differently too.
You mentioned a really important point then, Meg, and I'd love to get because you play in both spaces, and I think this is an important discussion. Where do you see the needs and the tensions being held between app-based meditation learning, which is programs or apps, and then face-to-face classes and having a teacher to talk to and teach from at a face-to-face level?
Oh, it's just such different experiences. So I see the value in app-based meditation practices, and the offering that, you can meditate anytime, anywhere, for as little or as long as you need. And, I think that that's wonderful. And there are some amazing, amazing apps and teachers out there that are sharing really powerful, meaningful content. But the meditative experience and the experience of being able to have that feedback in a class setting is just so enriching. And I think that a lot of people sort of think, I shouldn't really go to a class. They don't see the value in it necessarily. But when you go to a meditation class and you're in that group and you're riding the collective energy of the meditation experience, and then you have the chance at the end of the practice to share what came up for you, or to ask some questions, or to learn about a different aspect of theory that you might not have been open to otherwise, it's beyond transformative. And the level of community that I've seen established from these classes has just been so powerful. And I think we need that. I think a lot of us are missing that feeling of connection.
Yeah. And I completely agree with the answer. I think we need both in our lives. And I encourage anyone that's an app-only meditator that is getting reasonably serious to actually go and find a class, to find a teacher, to find someone if they are seeing the value and actually want to deepen their practice and be guided, which I think is really important. But again, I think the apps are important for almost your day-to-day mindfulness, and also there's a really strong need for them as an introductory, so someone can just dip their toe in it without having to feel like they've got to go to that class and feel really uncomfortable from day one.
Yeah, totally. It's a very accessible format, and I really, really see the value in having that kind of technology-based mindfulness practice available to people. And it's such a huge part of my work too, and something that I'm such a big advocate for. But I agree with what you're saying. If someone's wanting to go to that next level, I think being in front of other people is just so powerful.
Yeah. And you don't get to see often in the courses or the apps, you don't get to hear the teacher sit in vulnerability and and give the responses from a really this is actually how I feel today, or this is the teaching based on actually how I'm feeling, as opposed to the course is almost the prescribed perfect version of what this would look like, as opposed to often the class is the real version of day to day.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, in the classes as well, there's often just more of an opportunity to have the theory behind the practices too.
Yeah.
And that's where there's the opportunity to take the practice then out into the real world. And that's kind of where we need it the most, to learn how to not be reactive when someone cuts you off in traffic, or to not be so overwhelmed by the small kind of inconveniences throughout the day, like waiting in line at the post office and, those sorts of things. I think that having the theory and being able to have these types of conversations is where you start to live your life a little bit differently than if you were just listening to meditation recordings through an app.
Yeah. I think this is a nice segue into what you were saying before about day to day, and sharing those experiences. You're a mum now. Obviously, I'm a father. So I'd love to talk a little bit about mindful parenting. And, you mentioned before we sort of got on air that you've been living this mindfulness a lot more because of the kids. They've really brought a lot more of that out in you. And I'd love to talk to you about that in terms of what that's actually meant for you.
Yeah. I think mothering for me has just felt like such a spiritual practice in devotion to my son, Oscar. And having had him and not having had much of an opportunity to meditate, or as much of an opportunity as I used to, I really realized, okay, the way that I am going to approach this is to parent as mindfully as I can and to be present with him as often as I can, to make the most of each and every moment. So the way that I do that, I guess, is just trying to make each day sacred in a way. And so we have quite a lot of ritual to our lives. And I think that that's just such a simple way to find mindfulness and to create moments of connection that feel really conscious and meaningful, and they're not that hard and they're genuinely enjoyable. So a few little rituals that we have every morning, my son and I pick a tarot card for the day together.
Yeah, I love that.
No idea what's going on. He's 16 months old, but he loves it. And we do a lot of spending time in nature. I think that that's another way that we can really be present and, I guess just be sort of more mindful in our engagements together, to be outside and to connect with the senses. So exploring, different leaves and all those sorts of things, very simple elements. And I think that my practice also dictates the way in which I've made parenting decisions.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I think particularly as a new mother, you often have these feelings of, okay, well, this is what everyone else is doing, and this is what everyone else's child is doing. So, am I doing it wrong? Am I hindering myself in some way? There's a lot of doubt that comes into it. So I think that in coming back to mothering from my center, I make decisions that are right for me and my son as an individual, rather than just kind of going along with what everyone else is doing or what everyone else says. And that's been quite empowering for me.
So I think that's a really important lesson of that self-awareness for authenticity, to have the courage to follow your path as a mum, and especially as a new mum, because it can feel for many mums overwhelming, and that they have to follow the masses to parent a certain way because they're new and quite vulnerable. But for you to be able to check in with you and go, actually, what's right for me? What's right for my child? And having that courage to, with barriers, with obviously knowledge outside, but to choose within that framework of at a very early age of parenting, of what you want to do and how you want to show up.
Absolutely. And it's just made it such a joyous experience for me to be able to do it that way too. And I'm so grateful for that. And what's amazing is I feel like my son and I just have this insane connection, bond, and I don't think that I would have had that with him if I didn't have these practices behind me.
Yeah. And the ritual piece, Meg, I think is a really important one to just touch back on, that, as much as at 16 months, you might not think there's a lot happening there. Starting rituals at a very young age, at 3 they do. And then at 5, if that ritual's continued, back to sort of the practices, because watching telly or being on your phone or doing all those other things without knowing it, they're rituals. So like when you get home from school or work and go straight to your iPad and don't talk to your mum or your dad and go to your room, that's a ritual. So these rituals are taking place regardless. So when we've got rituals of connection, of consciousness, of connecting to nature, that becomes the energy of the house, of the child, of the relationship, which I think you're doing is at an early age, this becomes normalized.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's such a trap to fall into that's, quite easy, of choosing to connect with technology instead. And that's always been something that's been in the back of my mind, that I'm conscious of the impact that has on my son. I don't want to be on my phone the whole time, or the computer the whole time, or have the TV on the whole time. I want him to really value just that human connection, rather than needing that stimulation from technology, because I think it's incredibly addictive for everyone, and can be quite troubling.
And those rituals of technology, or those rituals of TV or disconnect, as you're saying, are hard to break at 10 or 11 when you've been doing it, and then you decide to come home and go, actually, we're going to turn the tellies off, put the phones down, and practice gratitude, when the kids are like, we've never done this before in our lives. Like this is mum's obviously read something or watched something, or dad's been to visit someone, and now we're going to talk about gratitude when it's never been in this house. And often the problem we face is that 2 weeks later that the old patterns come back, and it makes it quite difficult.
Yeah, I can totally imagine that. That makes a lot of sense.
So in terms of your parenting practice, or in terms of parenting, how are you feeling with letting go of the more formal potential sits and work in mindfulness, and allowing the almost like it's a 12 or 24 month retreat with your bub, and just sitting there and being with Oscar?
I just feel like it's the most precious thing in the entire world, and it's been a very challenging experience for many reasons as well. Oscar was quite a difficult baby, and he still wakes up like 3 times a night, and I think that because of all of the different lessons that have been coming up throughout this experience for me, it's made it kind of okay to take a bit of a step back from my work, because I feel as though what I'm gaining in this season of my life is going to add so much value to the work that I do in the future, and my ability to teach and to share and to connect. So my ego, takes a little bit of a hit sometimes, because I'm like, oh, I want to be back out there doing things and feeling valued for being something other than just being a mum. But at the same time, I would never want to wish this time away. So I've been incredibly grateful that I've been able to have this experience of just extended time with my son.
Yeah, it's really nice to hear. I actually literally treat the kids as a retreat, and I like Maple's 3 now, and she was probably the most difficult sleeper we had out of the whole 5 kids.
Oh, really?
And she'd wake up 3, maybe 4 or 5 times a night up until she was only a few months ago.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I can remember thinking to myself, just say thank you for waking me up, and teaching me patience and teaching me compassion and teaching me empathy, in the middle of the night, that, if you went to retreat, you'd actually pay thousands of dollars for this. And you're giving it to me for free. So it's like just trying to reframe it a little bit, that, yeah, exactly what you're saying, that you're going to learn so much from this experience that will make you a better teacher, person, mother down the track.
Yeah, and I love that you call it a retreat, because that's exactly how I've viewed it as well. I mean, it's definitely not quite a golden door experience.
No, it's not. It's more of a Vipassana type.
Yes, exactly. But the Vipassana, you are in discomfort, and I think
that's right.
Having young children brings up a lot of discomfort, because you are being woken up a lot of the time, and there isn't as much of an opportunity to kind of, I don't know, just relax and stop. It's all go. So I think that's where, as you say, you have the opportunity to learn so much. And I would pay good money for all of the things that I've learned over this season.
Yeah. And do you have that realization or that feeling that just without realizing it before children, just how much of life was about you, and then how much of it now is about other people and giving?
Yeah, definitely. And also just think about the things that you do, keep me up at night. I felt like, because I had so much time to just think about myself, I was often sweating the small stuff more than I would these days. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts of becoming a parent, is that your perspective changes so greatly overnight. And now I think about, okay, what's going to be best for my son, and a lot of the decisions that I'm making for the future are kind of more guided by him and his needs, and that's been really, really powerful. And I think it makes me feel more grounded as a person, and it's quite a humbling experience too.
Yeah. If you're going to, from your mother lens, and also from being a meditation teacher, if you're going to give a new mum advice on how to, show up a little bit more mindful, or to use mindfulness, to help with parenting, what would be, your top sort of tip?
Breathe. I think it's easy to forget to breathe in all of those moments.
That's such a great starting point. Seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, practice self-compassion. You're new to this, your baby's new to this, your partner is new to this. Like, it is the most dramatic change ever, and you're not going to know the answers, and you're not going to get it right the whole time, and it is really hard. And I think if you can be kind to yourself throughout the experience, it just makes it so much easier to have that voice in your head being able to remind you like you're doing the best that you can do and you're doing an amazing job and you're the right mother or parent for your baby, rather than getting so overwhelmed by the inner critic.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a beautiful spot to leave it, Meg. So I think that was beautifully finished. And just before we go, if people want to find out more about you and your teachings of meditation, I know that you're on Insight Timer, which is an amazing meditation app. And also, if people want to contact you around working with you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Insight Timer. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is at megjames.com.au, which is also my website. And yeah, you can send me an email. I'll probably take about a month to respond, but I will get back to you.
No, you're good for the podcast. You were back to me straight away. So.
Oh, that's good. I'm usually pretty terrible.
All right. So thanks for that, Meg. I really appreciate it. And thanks for coming on Conscious Conversations.
My pleasure, Luke. Thank you so much. And have an awesome afternoon.